A flight attendant holds all the power in the cabin, responsible for safety, security, and service. But what happens when that power is twisted by prejudice? This is the true-to-life story of Dr. Evelyn Reed, a black woman flying undercover who was targeted, harassed, and accused of being a threat by a flight attendant named Barbara. The attendant, blinded by bias, called security on her. She had no idea she had just sealed her own fate, because the woman she targeted wasn't just a passenger. She was the high-level FAA inspector sent to audit that very flight. The air in Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, DFW, was a familiar soup of stale pretzels, jet fuel, and human anxiety. To Dr. Evelyn Reed, it was just another Tuesday. To her cover identity, Brenda Smith, it was a nightmare. Evelyn, a woman whose sharp, analytical mind had earned her a doctorate in aeronautical engineering and a high-ranking, clandestine role at the Federal Aviation Administration, was a master of disguise. Today, her disguise was nervous. She wore a faded floral blouse, slightly too large glasses that she kept pushing up her nose, and clutched a worn paperback titled The Girl on the Train. Her hair, usually impeccably styled, was pulled back in a simple, functional bun. She was Brenda Smith, a librarian from Atlanta, deathly afraid of flying, on her way to her sister's wedding in Los Angeles. Her target was Velocity Airlines, Flight 815. Velocity was a budget carrier that had exploded onto the scene, all bright neon branding and slick marketing about flying revolutionized. But behind the social media campaign, complaints were piling up. Reports of shoddy maintenance, rushed safety procedures, and a hostile corporate culture had triggered the FAA's red flag system. And when the system flagged, they sent Evelyn. She wasn't just an inspector. She was the head of the National Covert Auditing Program. She didn't just check clipboards and exit signs. She observed the human factor, the unquantifiable element of crew behavior, bias, and morale that was often the root cause of disaster. She approached Gate C-22. The boarding area was a zoo. Velocity Airlines' revolutionary process seemed to be board everyone at once and see what happens. The gate agent was snapping at passengers, her voice a metallic whine over the PA system. Evelyn, as Brenda, flinched appropriately. In the priority boarding line, a man, let's call him Chad, was arguing loudly. He was a sunburned man in his late 20s, wearing a Vegas or bust tank top, and his carry-on was a bright red duffel bag that looked like it could hold a small tuba. "Come on, lady, it's just a little big," Chad boomed. The gate agent, already fried, just waved him through. "Fine, whatever, just get on." Evelyn, watching from the Group 4 line, made her first mental note. Differential enforcement of baggage policy. Passenger non-compliance rewarded. Then, the Group 4 call came. Evelyn shuffled forward, her hand gripping the handle of her standard-issue, FAA-approved roller board. It was exactly the regulation size, down to the millimeter. She handed her pass to the agent, who barely looked at it. "Go." Evelyn stepped onto the jet bridge, the scent of stress intensifying. At the door of the aircraft, she was met by the welcoming committee. Or rather, she was met by Barbara. Barbara "Barb" Jensen was the senior flight attendant. She had 25 years in the sky, and her face was a permanent mask of strained patience. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to be the source of her irritation. Beside her, a much younger attendant, Chloe Vance, hovered nervously, a trainee-to-do list in her hand. "Welcome," Barb said, her voice flat, her eyes scanning the economy passengers with the enthusiasm of a health inspector at a Roach motel. Evelyn, as Brenda, gave a shaky smile. "Hello, I'm a little nervous. It's my sister's wedding." Barb's eyes flicked over her. The cheap floral blouse, the simple hair, the dark skin. Her gaze, which had been merely tired, hardened into something else. Annoyance, distaste. 32B, middle seat. Move along, Mom. You're holding up the line. Evelyn flinched, clutching her paperback. Oh, I'm sorry. She stepped into the cabin and was immediately hit by the smell of industrial cleaner and stale air. She began her walk down the narrow aisle, her trained eyes scanning everything, even as her body language screamed, "Scared librarian." Worn carpeting, aisle-facing armrest on 12C won't stay up. Overhead, bin latch on 18A is loose. She saw her row. A young mother, Sarah, was already in the window seat, struggling to buckle in a fussy toddler. The aisle seat was empty. Evelyn, Brenda, paused, her bag at her feet. "Excuse me," she said, her voice small. From behind her, Barb's voice cut through the cabin like a box cutter. "Ma'am, you can't block the aisle. Put your bag up and sit down." Evelyn's cover was a nervous flyer, not an incompetent one. "Oh, I will, this poor mother looks like she needs a hand." "It's not your job to help her. It's your job to get out of the way," Barb snapped. She pushed past Evelyn, her hip checking her hard against the seat. "Move." Evelyn stumbled slightly. The young mother, Sarah, looked up, horrified at the exchange. Barb grabbed Evelyn's perfectly sized rollerboard. "This is too big," she declared, though it was visibly identical to the bags she'd let pass. "Oh, I checked the sizer." Evelyn, Brenda, stammered. "It won't fit." "We have to check it," Barb said, yanking the bag from her. "Please," Evelyn said, a genuine note of panic in her voice now. My medication is in there. I really can't check it." This was true, her credentials were in a false bottom, but she did have migraine medication in the front pocket. Barb let out an exaggerated sigh, as if she were dealing with a child. "Fine," she hissed. She rammed the bag into the overhead bin above row 31, shoving other passengers' items out of the way. It fit perfectly, with room to spare. Barb glared at Evelyn. "Now, sit. Down." Evelyn, her face a mask of mild humiliation, slid into 32B. She looked at the young mother, Sarah, and gave a small, sammed smile. But as she sat, and as Barb turned her back to go berate someone else, Evelyn's hand went to the small, leather-bound notebook in her purse. She clicked her pen. Initial crew interaction, hostile, Senior FAB Jensen, discriminatory baggage enforcement, physical contact with passenger. She was just getting started. And so, unfortunately, was Barb. Boarding continued its chaotic descent. The man in the Vegas or bust tank top, Chad, swaggered down the aisle. His monstrous red duffel bag, the one the gate agent had given up on, was now a problem for the cabin crew. He reached row 15 and, with a grunt, tried to shove it into the overhead bin. It wouldn't fit. Not even close. "Hey!" he yelled. "This stupid bin is broken." Barb, who had just finished snapping at Evelyn, transformed. She hurried up the aisle, her face wreathed in a completely different kind of smile. It was flirty, accommodating, and utterly false. "Oh, goodness! Let me help you with that, hun," she cooed. "This thing won't fit," Chad grumbled. "Well, look at these muscles. I'm sure we can make it work," Barb tittered. She and Chloe proceeded to spend almost 3 full minutes rearranging the entire bin, shoving other passengers' coats and bags around, until Chad's giant red bag was squeezed in. "There we go, all set," Barb said, patting his arm. "Thanks, ladies," Chad said, winking at Chloe, who blushed. Evelyn, 2 rows back from the young mother Sarah, but still in her assigned seat, 32B, watched the entire exchange. Her pen was moving again, shielded by her open paperback. F.A. Jensen Vance spent 2:45 min assisting non-compliant baggage for passenger, 15C, male, white. Contrasts with hostile enforcement, 0.15 sec, For passenger 32B, female, black. This wasn't just bad service. This was a pattern. This was the exact human factor she was sent to find. Bias, even in small doses, was a cancer. It meant that in an emergency, a flight attendant might listen to one passenger's warning and ignore another's. It was a safety issue, plain and simple. The man who had the aisle seat, 32C, finally arrived. He was a large man, buried in noise-cancelling headphones, and he smelled of Cinnabon. He plopped down, his elbow immediately claiming the shared armrest, and closed his eyes. Evelyn, Brenda, sighed, pressing herself against the middle seat partition. "All right, people, settle in." Barb's voice crackled over the PA. "We're trying to get out of here on time, which means your cooperation. Flight attendants, prepare for door closure and cross-check." Evelyn watched Chloe, the trainee, as she went to the door. Chloe fumbled with the heavy lever, her hands shaking. Barb barked from the aft galley. "Chloe, use your body weight. Are you trying to disarm it or arm it? Pay attention." Chloe, now bright red, finally managed to lock the door. She looked like she was on the verge of tears. Evelyn made another note. In-flight crew training appears to be based on humiliation and fear. Creates high-stress, high-error environment. The plane began to push back. The captain, a man named Miller, came on the PA with a bored-sounding drawl, rattling off the flight time to LAX. Then, the safety demonstration began. This was one of Evelyn's primary checkpoints. Chloe stood in the aisle, her smile frozen and terrified. She held up the seatbelt. "To fasten your seatbelt," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "Louder, Chloe," Barb hissed from the jump seat. Chloe squeaked. "Insert the metal fitting into the buckle." She was rushing, her movements jerky. She dropped the demo oxygen mask. She fumbled to pick it up, her face crimson. Meanwhile, Barb, on the aft jump seat, wasn't even watching. She was filing her nails, sighing heavily every few seconds. Evelyn's pen flew. Safety briefing non-compliant. F.A. Vance inaudible. F.A. Jensen, senior, non-attentive, unprofessional, and undermining trainee. Fails sterile cockpit protocols. The engines spooled up. Evelyn, Brenda, tensed her body, playing the part. She gripped the armrest, the one she wasn't sharing with Mr. Cinnabon, and squeezed her eyes shut. The plane roared down the runway and lifted into the air. Evelyn felt the familiar, beautiful sensation of lift. It was the part of the job she still loved, the physics of a 200-ton machine defying gravity. As the fasten seatbelt sign dinged off, Barb and Chloe were immediately up. They wheeled the beverage cart into the aisle. Evelyn waited. The cart slowly made its way down, an oasis of tiny sodas in a desert of recycled air. When it reached her row, Barb was in charge. Chloe, her silent, miserable assistant. "Drinks," Barb stated. It wasn't a question. "Oh yes, please," Evelyn, Brenda said, her voice wavering. "Could I just have some water, please? I have to take my medication." Barb's eyes narrowed. "What medication?" "It's just for my nerves," Evelyn stammered, holding up her migraine bottle as proof. Barb snatched the bottle from her hand. "Acetaminophen. This is just Tylenol." It's a migraine blend," Evelyn said, her voice shrinking. "Please, I get headaches." Barb handed the bottle back, her lip curled. "You shouldn't be taking pills for nerves on a plane. It's dangerous." She slapped a plastic cup of water onto Evelyn's tray table, sloshing half of it. "Anything else?" "No, thank you," Evelyn whispered, wiping up the water with a napkin. "Drinks?" Barb said to Mr. Cinnabon in 32C. He pulled one headphone off. "Yeah, 2 Cokes and a full can of whiskey. Double." "We only have mini bottles of Jack Daniels, sir," Barb said, her smile returning instantly. "And it's $12 a bottle." "Fine, give me 4. "Coming right up," Barb said, ringing him up. Evelyn's pen found her notebook. F.A. Jensen, medical overreach. Questioned passenger medication. Violated privacy. Demonstrated hostile service to 32B versus preferential upsell service to 32C. She took a sip of water, her mind clicking. The infractions were piling up. But so far, it was just a case of a terrible, discriminatory employee. Then, it escalated. Barb, having finished serving the man 4 whiskies, looked at Evelyn. She saw the open notebook in Evelyn's lap. She saw the pen. Her face, which had been set in its usual mask of annoyance, suddenly sharpened. It was a look Evelyn had seen before. It was the look of paranoid authority. "What?" Barb said, her voice low and cold. "Are you writing?" The question hung in the recycled air, sharp and accusatory. Evelyn, Brenda, flinched, a performance so natural it was indistinguishable from the real thing. She snapped the small notebook shut. "Oh, nothing. Just a diary. Writing to my sister. About the clouds," she stammered. Barb Jensen was not a stupid woman. She was a paranoid one. She had 25 years of entitled passengers, secret shoppers from corporate, and a deep-seated resentment. She saw conspiracies everywhere. And in Evelyn, she didn't see a nervous librarian. She saw a threat. "A diary," Barb repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Writing about the clouds." "Yes, I find it calming." "You've been writing in that thing since you got on," Barb said, her eyes narrowing to slits. "I saw you. During the safety briefing. You were writing." "I was just jotting down some thoughts." "You," Barb said, pointing a lacquered nail at her. "Need to put that away. Now." I don't think I have to," Evelyn said, her Brenda persona wavering, replaced by a flicker of quiet dignity. "You're making the other passengers nervous," Barb lied. Mr. Cinnabon was already on his second Jack Daniels, and Sarah, the young mother, was just trying to keep her toddler from screaming. "I'm just sitting here, quietly. Put it away, or I'll have to confiscate it." "You have no right to confiscate my personal property," Evelyn said. Her voice was still quiet, but the tremor was gone. Barb was taken aback. This nervous librarian suddenly had a spine. This to Barb was confirmation. This was not a nervous flyer. This was an act. "We'll see about that," Barb hissed. She shoved the cart and stomped back to the aft galley, dragging Chloe with her. Evelyn took a deep, steadying breath. This was the turning point. The audit had just shifted from passive observation to active confrontation. She discreetly pulled out her phone, switched it to airplane mode, and opened her audio notes app. She placed it on the tray table, partially hidden by her paperback. She didn't press record. Not yet. But she was ready. In the aft galley, the curtain was pulled shut, but the sound traveled. "She's lying," Barb whispered, her voice a furious rasp. "Did you see her? Writing everything down? My sister's wedding. Please. She's a secret shopper, or one of those travel blogger types trying to get a free flight." "Barb, maybe she's just a writer," Chloe suggested, her voice timid. Chloe was desperate to de-escalate. She just wanted to get to LAX and pass her probation. "A writer? She's writing about us. About me. She's trying to get me fired." Barb peeked through the curtain. Evelyn was sitting perfectly still, staring at the seat back in front of her. "Look at her. She's listening. She's suspicious. You know, Global West Airlines fired a senior girl last month over one of these influencer videos." "So, what do we do?" Chloe asked. Barb's mind began to twist the narrative. A secret shopper was bad. A blogger was worse. But what if it was something else? A more serious threat? She's been watching us since DFW, Barb mused, her paranoia building. She was writing during the safety briefing. She was timing us, Chloe. She was timing the safety briefing. Chloe's blood ran cold. Timing? Why? Why do you think? Barb's voice dropped. Why would someone time a safety briefing? Why would they take notes on the crew, on the cabin, on the doors? This was a leap. Evelyn hadn't been looking at the doors, but in Barb's mind, she was. Barb, you don't mean... She's a threat, Chloe. A security threat. She's casing the plane. She's an erratic. The nervous flyer thing. It's a cover. The medication? A lie. She was testing me. This was the narrative Barb wanted. If Evelyn was a secret shopper, Barb was in trouble for being rude. But if Evelyn was a security threat, Barb would be a hero for catching her. We have to tell the captain, Barb said, her eyes gleaming with a strange, vindictive light. Tell him what? Chloe was panicking. That a lady is writing in a notebook? That a passenger, 32B, is exhibiting highly suspicious behavior, non-compliance, covert observation of crew procedures, potential casing of the aircraft. I'm going to call the flight deck. Barb, no! Isn't that a Level 2 report? That's serious. They'll call the feds. Exactly, Barb said, picking up the in-flight phone. It is serious, and I'm not losing my job to some blogger. I'm going to be the one who saved this flight. Barb pressed the button for the cockpit. Evelyn, in 32B, watched the flight attendant call, light flash above her. She knew exactly which line was being used. She knew it wasn't a passenger call. It was a call to the cockpit. She slid her finger over her phone screen, her thumb hovering over the record button. Captain Miller, Barb said, her voice a mask of professional, urgent concern. This is Barb in the aft galley. I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have a potential security situation in the main cabin. In the cockpit, Captain Miller sighed. He was 500 hours from retirement, flying for a budget airline he despised, and the last thing he wanted was drama. Go ahead, Barb. I have a passenger, 32B, female, who has been exhibiting highly erratic behavior, Barb said, her voice low and dramatic. Evelyn, in 32B, heard her name, and her Brenda cover was officially blown, though not in the way Barb thought. Barb, in the galley, continued, embellishing with every word. She's been taking extensive notes on crew procedures, specifically timing the safety briefing and observing the arming of the door. She became hostile when I questioned her about it. She's using a cover story, a nervous flyer, but it's not consistent. My professional assessment is that she is a potential threat. She's probing our responses. Captain Miller's blood ran cold. Probing? Barb, are you using that word? Yes, Captain. She's testing us. I have a bad feeling. A very bad feeling. On the other side of the flight deck door, there was a click. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed on, though the air was perfectly smooth. A message, stay in your seats. Miller spoke into his mic. Barb, maintain observation. Do not engage. I will consult. Consult meant calling the company. But there was someone more important than the company on this flight. In seat 3A, David Warren, the founder and CEO of Velocity Airlines, was on his third glass of champagne. He was schmoozing. The man in 3C, Mr. Harrison, was a potential investor, and Warren was laying the charm on thick. You see, Harrison, Warren was saying, it's all about disruption. The legacy carriers are dinosaurs. We're the meteor. We cut the fat. We automate. A quiet ding sounded, and Chloe Vance, her face pale as a sheet, appeared at his elbow. Mr. Warren, I'm I'm so sorry to bother you, but Barb needs you. In the forward galley. It's an emergency." Warren's smile froze. An emergency? On this flight? With this investor? "Excuse me, Harrison. The perils of being hands-on," he chuckled, a bead of sweat on his brow. He unbuckled and followed Chloe to the galley, pulling the curtain shut. "What?" he snapped. This had better be a fire. Barb had come up from the aft galley. Her face was a mask of grim importance. "Mr. Warren, we have a level 2 security threat." Warren's blood turned to ice. A what? On my plane?" "A passenger in economy, 32B, Barb said, launching into her story. "She's a black woman, probably mid-40s. She's using a fake name, Brenda Smith, acting like a nervous flyer. But she's a fake. She's been taking notes, timing our procedures. She has a notebook full of our security protocols." This was a massive lie. Evelyn's notebook had infractions, not protocols, but Barb was building her case. I confronted her, and she became belligerent. "The captain is aware. He's worried. We think she's casing the plane. Maybe for a future attempt. Maybe for this attempt." Warren looked like he was going to be sick. A security incident, even a hint of one, would kill his investor deal. It could ground his airline. So what do we do?" Warren whispered, his disruptor bravado vanishing. "The captain wants to divert to Vegas," Barb said. "But I told him I could handle it. I told him we can have authorities meet us at the gate at LAX. Quietly. We get her, before she knows what's happening." Warren saw his opening. A diversion was expensive and a PR nightmare. A quiet arrest at the gate? That was manageable. He could spin that. Velocity's vigilant crew stops a potential threat. He looked at Barb. He didn't see a paranoid, racist employee. He saw a solution. He saw a hero. "Barbara," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're right. You're absolutely right. This is why you're our best. Do exactly as you said. Notify the captain. No diversion. We land at LAX. We'll have security there. I want this woman taken off my aircraft so fast her head spins." "Yes, Mr. Warren," Barb said, adrenaline surging through her. She was no longer just a flight attendant. She was saving the company. Good, Warren said. "Now, keep an eye on her. Don't let her, go to the bathroom or talk to anyone." "She won't," Barb said. Warren went back to his seat, his face pale. "Sorry about that," he said to Mr. Harrison. "Just a small catering issue, all handled." But Mr. Harrison was looking at the fasten seatbelt sign. "Catering issue? You turned the sign on for a catering issue?" Warren started to sweat. Back in the aft galley, Barb was on the phone to the captain again. "Sir, Mr. Warren agrees. We land at LAX. He wants authorities on the jet bridge. He wants her arrested." "Arrested? Barb, are you 100% sure? Because if you're wrong—" "Captain," Barb said, her voice hard. "She threatened me. She's a danger to this flight. Are you going to question my 25 years of experience?" There was a long silence. "Fine," Miller's voice crackled. "LAX. Authorities on the gate. But this is your call, Barb. Your file." "Understood." Barb hung up. She turned to Chloe. "Go back out there. Wheel the cart. Act normal. But you are not to serve her. You are not to speak to her. If she moves, you call me. Understand?" "Yes, Barb." Chloe, shaking, pushed the cart into the cabin for a second. Final pass. Evelyn, in 32B, watched her approach. She had hit record on her phone the moment Barb left the galley. She had a perfect, high-quality audio recording of Barb's conversation with the captain and a muffled but discernible audio record of the meeting with the CEO. Chloe got to her row. She served Mr. Cinnabon another Jack Daniels. She served the young mother, Sarah, a juice box for her toddler with a trembling hand. And she skipped Evelyn. Completely. She didn't look at her, didn't speak to her. Evelyn, Brenda, raised her hand slightly. "Excuse me. Miss?" Chloe froze, her back to Evelyn. "Miss, I was just wondering what time we land. I'm worried about my connection." Chloe turned, her face a mask of terror. I can't talk to you," she whispered, and ran back to the galley with the cart. The entire row, and the row behind, saw it. "Well, that was rude," said the woman behind Evelyn. Evelyn just sighed, her face the perfect picture of a weary, mistreated passenger. Crew non-interaction, passenger shunning, creating a hostile and observable incident. The trap was no longer just set. Barb, Chloe, and the CEO of Velocity Airlines were all walking right into it. An hour passed. The cabin was dark, most passengers lulled by the engine's drone or the flickering blue light of the seatback screens. For Evelyn, it had been a masterclass in hostile architecture. Barb and Chloe had made a point to walk the aisles, but they created a 3-foot bubble around row 32, never making eye contact, never responding. It was a classic shunning tactic, designed to isolate and intimidate. But Evelyn needed one more piece of evidence. She unbuckled her seatbelt. Her cover needed a reason to get up. She leaned over to Mr. Cinnabon, who was now sleeping noisily, 4 empty mini bottles of Jack Daniels on his tray table. She gently tapped his knee. He didn't budge. "Excuse me," she said, a little louder. "Sir, I need to get out." He grunted, his eyes cracking open. He glared at her, annoyed, and then with a theatrical, huffing sigh, he grabbed his tray table, knocking the bottles to the floor, and hauled himself into the aisle to let her pass. The moment she stepped into the aisle, a voice barked from the aft galley. "Ma'am, where are you going?" It was Barb. She was sitting on the jump seat, arms crossed, staring directly at her. Evelyn, Brenda, clutched her stomach. I just need to use the restroom. I'm not feeling well." "The aft lavatory is out of order," Barb lied, her voice flat and cold. Evelyn knew this was a lie. She had checked the plane's manifest before boarding. Both aft lavatories were operational. This was a control tactic. "Oh," Evelyn said, her voice full of feigned distress. "But the front ones? That's first class, isn't it? I don't want to be a bother." "You'll use the mid-cabin lavatory," Barb said, pointing to the restrooms 15 rows up. "Go." Evelyn nodded, her face a picture of meek compliance. "Okay, thank you." She began the long walk up the aisle. She felt Barb's eyes burning into her back. This was part of the test. Barb wanted her contained, but Evelyn didn't just walk. She observed. Row 21. Passenger luggage blocking aisle access. Row 19. Unattended meal tray. Row 17. Passenger using non-approved electronic device, a vape. She was cataloguing, her memory photographic. She reached the mid-cabin lavatory and locked the door. She took a deep breath. She wasn't just here to use the facility. She was here to inspect it. This was Barb's fatal mistake. By denying her access to the aft lavatory, she had given Evelyn free rein to inspect another part of the plane, and a justification for being out of her seat for an extended period. Evelyn was methodical. First, the smoke detector. She ran her fingers lightly over the casing. It was intact. Second, the trash receptacle. She pushed the flap. The spring-loaded fire containment cover was working. Third, the emergency supplies. Behind the mirror, she knew, was a stash of equipment. She didn't need to open it. She was checking the seals. Fourth, the door latch. She tested the emergency override. She was in there for precisely 4 minutes. To a normal passenger, this was nothing. To a paranoid flight attendant, it was an eternity. When she stepped out, Chloe was waiting for her, her face ashen. You were in there a long time," Chloe stammered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and accusation. "I told you," Evelyn, Brenda said, clutching her stomach again. "I'm not feeling well. That water, it tasted funny." She brushed past the terrified trainee and began the long walk back to her seat. As she passed row 15, Chad, in the Vegas or bust tank top, was standing in the aisle, talking loudly to a friend 3 rows back. He was completely blocking the path. "Excuse me," Evelyn said. Chad ignored her. She waited. 1 second. 2. 5. From the aft galley, Barb's voice boomed. "Ma'am, 32B, I told you to return to your seat. Stop disturbing other passengers." Evelyn was being reprimanded for waiting for an aisle blocker. The bias was so thick, it was suffocating. He's in my way," Evelyn said, gesturing to Chad. Barb stormed up the aisle, her face a thundercloud. She didn't look at Chad. She looked at Evelyn. "You are being a disruptive passenger," Barb seethed, her voice low so only the nearby rows could hear. "I have told the captain. He has turned the seatbelt sign on. You are in violation of federal law by being out of your seat." The sign had been on the whole time, but it was routinely ignored, as Chad was demonstrating. I just used the restroom you told me to use," Evelyn said, her voice shaking with, this time, very real, anger. "She's fine, Barb," Chad said, finally noticing. He winked at Evelyn. "Just having a chat." Barb's fury, denied its target in Chad, rounded on Evelyn. "You, sit down. Now, if you get out of that seat one more time, for any reason, I will have you restrained." This was it. The direct threat. Evelyn said nothing. She looked at Barb, her eyes filled with a manufactured fear that concealed a core of pure, cold steel. She returned to 32B. Mr. Cinnabon was still asleep. She slid past him, buckled her belt, and looked at her phone. The audio file was now over an hour long. She picked up her notebook. Passenger threat. F.A. Jensen threatened illegal restraint. Weaponized seatbelt sign for intimidation. Failed to correct aisle-blocking passenger, 15C. Blamed compliant passenger, 32B. Confrontation in lavatory, F.A. Vance. This crew is non-compliant, hostile, and compromised. The plane was beginning its descent. The real show was about to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller." The voice from the flight deck was different. The bored drawl was gone, replaced by a tense, formal clip. "We've been given priority approach into Los Angeles. We will be on the ground in approximately 20 minutes. The fasten seatbelt sign is on. I need all passengers to return to their seats and fasten their seatbelts immediately. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival and then secure your jump seats. I want no one moving in the cabin." The subtext was clear. This is not a normal landing. Passengers, sensing the tension, fell silent. Sarah, the young mother, clutched her toddler, who had finally fallen asleep. Mr. Cinnabon in 32C was snoring, oblivious. Evelyn watched Barb and Chloe. They moved through the cabin with a frantic, jerky energy, yanking at seat backs and slamming overhead bins. There was no please, no thank you. It was the security check of a crew on edge. Barb stopped at Evelyn's row. She didn't look at her. She grabbed Evelyn's tray table, which was already up, and slammed it hard into the seat back, as if to make sure it was latched. It was a final, petty act of aggression. Then, Barb went to the aft jump seat. Chloe went to the forward. The cabin lights were dimmed. The plane banked hard, a fast, military-style descent that told Evelyn everything she needed to know. The captain was treating this as a high priority, get on the ground now situation. Barb's report hadn't just been logged, it had been believed. Evelyn leaned her head against the cool plastic of the cabin wall. Her Brenda persona was done. She was Dr. Evelyn Reed now, and she was preparing her case. She mentally reviewed her notes, the audio file, the sequence of events. Discrimination at boarding, non-compliant safety briefing, hostile beverage service, privacy violation, medication, public accusation, notebook. False report to flight deck, creating a security incident. CEO notification and complicity, public shunning and denial of service. Illegal threat of restraint. Weaponizing safety protocols. It was a full-blown, catastrophic failure of crew resource management, customer service, and federal compliance. And it was all based on one thing. Barb Jensen looked at a black woman and decided she was a threat. The wheels hit the tarmac at LAX with a jarring thud. The plane didn't just decelerate, it braked. Hard. Passengers were thrown forward against their belts. Evelyn recognized the maneuver. The captain was getting off the runway now. He taxied at high speed, not toward the sea terminal, where Velocity Airlines usually parked, but toward a remote, isolated gate, a hard stand. A few passengers, seasoned flyers, began to murmur, "Why are we over here? This isn't the gate. What's going on?" The plane came to a sudden, final stop. The engines spooled down, and then the captain came on the PA. His voice was grim. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a specific security situation, we must ask that you remain in your seats. Do not unbuckle your seatbelts. Do not open the overhead bins. You will not deplane at this time. The authorities will be boarding the aircraft. Please remain calm." Calm was the last thing in the cabin. A ripple of panic went through the plane. "Authorities! Oh my God, is there a bomb? What is happening?" Sarah, the young mother, began to sob quietly. Barb Jensen unbuckled from her jump seat. She stood, her face a mask of smug, righteous vindication. She had done it. She had saved the plane. She was the hero. The main cabin door hissed open. Evelyn saw them first. 2 LAX airport police officers. They were followed by a man in a suit, a federal air marshal, who had been deadheading on the flight and had been activated. And behind him was David Warren, the CEO, his face pale and set. He had come back from first class to watch his victory. Barb strode up the aisle from the back, meeting the officers in the middle. "It's her," Barb said, her voice loud enough for the entire silent cabin to hear. She raised her arm and pointed, a single dramatic finger aimed directly at the nervous librarian in the floral blouse. "It's 32B. Brenda Smith. She's the threat." The entire cabin turned. Every eye, terrified, curious, angry, was on Evelyn. Sarah, the young mother, gasped, pulling her child closer. Mr. Cinnabon, finally awake, just stared, confused. Officer Daniels, the lead airport cop, moved down the aisle. He was all business. "Ma'am? Brenda Smith?" Evelyn sat perfectly still. She looked at the accusing finger of Barb Jensen. She looked at the smug, relieved face of CEO David Warren. She looked at the terrified trainee, Chloe. She looked at Officer Daniels. "Yes?" she said, her voice calm, clear, and utterly devoid of the Brenda stammer. "Ma'am, I need you to stand up and place your hands where I can see them. We're going to have you deplane. Now." "I don't think so," Evelyn said. A wave of shock rippled through the plane. Barb's face darkened. "She's resisting. I told you. She's non-compliant." "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you again," Officer Daniels said, his hand moving toward his belt. Evelyn slowly reached, not for the ceiling, but for her purse at her feet. "Officer, don't let her!" Barb shrieked. The air marshal tensed. "My hands are going to my bag," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the panic like a surgeon's scalpel. "I am retrieving my identification. Officer Daniels, you will want to see this. She pulled out, not her wallet, but a black, leather-bound credential case. She flipped it open. My name, she said, her voice rising to command the cabin, is Dr. Evelyn Reed. I am the National Program Director for Covert Compliance and Safety Auditing for the Federal Aviation Administration. She held up the badge. The golden eagle and the shield of the Department of Transportation gleamed, even in the dim cabin light. Silence. A profound, absolute, terrified silence. Officer Daniels, the cop, froze. He looked at the badge. He looked at her face. He looked at the badge again. I don't. You can check my credentials, Evelyn said, standing up. She was no longer Brenda. She was 5'10", of pure, unadulterated authority. But I assure you, they are real. This flight, Velocity 815, was a covert audit. She turned, her eyes locking on Barb Jensen. Barb's face had gone from smug to shocked to a mottled, chalk white. Her mouth was open. No sound was coming out. And Flight Attendant Barbara Jensen, Evelyn continued, has just provided the most comprehensive record of non-compliance, discrimination, and passenger endangerment I have ever witnessed in my 15-year career. David Warren, the CEO, stumbled. No, wait, this is a trick. She's a fake. She threatened. Evelyn turned her gaze to him. Mr. Warren, you are the CEO of this airline, and you were made complicit in this report an hour ago in the forward galley. You actively participated in a conspiracy to profile and illegally detain a passenger who you believe to be a security threat without cause. You. How did you? Warren stammered. Evelyn held up her smartphone. Because my audio recorder was on. I have a full, high-fidelity recording of Flight Attendant Jensen's false report to the captain, her subsequent slander of me to you, and your authorization to handle me at the gate. Chloe Vance, the trainee, made a small sound and fainted, slumping into the aisle. Barb looked at the phone. She looked at the badge. She looked at the fainted trainee. But, you were suspicious, Barb finally shrieked, the desperation setting in. You were timing us. You were in the lavatory. You're black, and you were acting weird. She said it, out loud, the quiet part. The entire cabin heard it. The gasp was universal. Officer Daniels, his face now grim, looked at Barb. Mom, I think you need to be quiet. No. Barb was melting down. She's trying to get me fired. She's I am, Evelyn said, a federal officer. And you, Flight Attendant Jensen, in your paranoia, created a security incident where none existed. You lied to the captain. You lied to your CEO. You endangered this entire flight by forcing a priority landing, all because you didn't like the look of a passenger. Evelyn looked at Officer Daniels. Officer, I am not the one you should be focused on. She is. She threatened me with illegal restraint. She denied me service, and she violated Federal Code 14, Parts 121 and 135, regarding crew conduct. But more importantly, she assaulted a federal officer. Barb's eyes widened. Assaulted? You checked my body against the seat during boarding, Evelyn said, her voice ice. Officer Daniels, I am not detaining the aircraft, but she is. I wish to press charges. And Mr. Warren, you are going to be a witness. The Karma didn't just hit. It landed like a 747 with no landing gear. Officer Daniels, who had boarded the plane to arrest a terrorist, was now in the impossibly awkward position of having to arrest a senior flight attendant at the direct request of a high-level federal official. Barbara Jensen, he said, his voice flat, pulling out a pair of zip cuffs. You are being detained for questioning regarding assault and interference with a federal investigation. The click of the plastic cuffs tightening was the only sound in the cabin, and then Barb, who had been frozen in white-hot shock, simply detonated. "No!" she shrieked, a sound that was half rage, half panic. She tried to pull away, her eyes wild. "It's a fake! It's a trick! She's the liar! Check her badge! She's the one who threatened me. She's the security threat. Passengers, help me! She's a fake!" But the passengers were just staring, their phones now universally up and recording. "Barb, please, stop!" a small voice cried. It was Chloe. She had pulled herself up from her faint, her face a mess of tears and mascara. "Barb, just stop! It's true! It's all true," she sobbed, looking at Evelyn. She just sat there. She was just writing. You told me to shun her. You told me to lie. You called the captain." That was the final nail. Barb's own trainee, her unwilling accomplice, had just testified against her in front of 150 witnesses. You traitor!" Barb hissed at Chloe, lunging, but Officer Daniels held her firm. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. Now." As the officer began to escort the cuffed and sobbing flight attendant up the aisle, Barb locked eyes one last time with Evelyn. Her face was a grotesque mask of hatred. You ruined me," she spat. Evelyn, who was calmly zipping her purse, didn't even blink. "No, Barbara. You had 25 years of chances to be a decent human being. You just ran out of time." Barb was hauled off the plane, her shrieks echoing down the jet bridge. The CIO, David Warren, was still standing by the first-class curtain. He had watched this all unfold, his disruptor smirk melting into abject horror. His high-value investor, Mr. Harrison, stepped past him, picking up his briefcase. "David," Harrison said, his voice cold, "this revolutionary airline of yours, it's a circus. And that," he motioned to the fainted trainee and the departing, screaming flight attendant, "is the worst show I've ever seen. The deal is off. My lawyers will be in touch." Warren didn't even watch him go. His entire focus was on Evelyn. His face, which had been pale, was now flushing a deep, angry red. The fear was being replaced by bluster. "This is insanity," he sputtered, marching down the aisle toward Evelyn. This is entrapment. You set us up. You can't just come on my plane." "Your plane?" Evelyn interrupted, her voice still quiet. But now it held all the power. "Yes, my plane. You can't. I'll have your job. I'll call Senator Jacobs. My lawyers will bury you. You don't have this authority. You tricked my employee." Evelyn finally stood up, grabbing her perfectly sized rollerboard. She stood in the aisle, eye to eye with the fuming CEO. "Mr. Warren," she said, and her voice was now the coldest thing in the cabin. "Entrapment is when an officer induces a person to commit a crime they otherwise wouldn't. I didn't induce your flight attendant to be racist. I didn't induce her to violate baggage policy based on a passenger's appearance. I didn't induce her to file a false security report to the cockpit, endangering this entire flight. And I certainly did not induce you," she said, poking a single, steady finger at his chest, "to authorize the illegal detainment of a passenger. I just sat in 32B and existed. You and your crew did the rest." You can't ground us," he whispered, finally understanding where this was going. "Oh, Mr. Warren, I already have." That's not possible. You can't just ground an airline." "As of this moment," Evelyn announced, her voice ringing with formal authority, "per Title 14, Code of Federal Regulations, I am issuing an emergency suspension of Velocity Airlines' operating certificate, pending a full investigation. Your entire fleet is grounded, effective now. Every Velocity plane, on the ground or in the air, will be diverted to the nearest suitable airport. Your air operator certificate is frozen." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You are no longer an airline, Mr. Warren. You are a federal investigation." The blood drained from his face. This was it. The end. He looked like a man who had just been shot. He stumbled back, falling into an empty aisle seat, his hands shaking. The second officer, who had returned from escorting Barb, put a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, Mr. Warren, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning, as a witness, and, potentially, as a party to a federal crime." Warren, silent, numb, and utterly broken, was led off the plane like a zombie. The cabin was silent for one long, stunned beat. Then, from the back, a passenger started to clap, slowly, then another. And then the woman behind Evelyn, the one who had called Barb rude, stood up and started cheering. Within 5 seconds, the entire cabin, minus the sleeping Mr. Cinnabon, was on its feet, erupting in a wave of applause and relieved, shaky laughter. Evelyn, the consummate professional, simply held up a hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "please, my name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. I apologize on behalf of the Federal Aviation Administration for this chaotic end to your flight. You are all witnesses to a catastrophic failure of safety and service. You are safe. The FAA is now in control of this situation. We will have you deplaned by FAA-vetted ground crew shortly." She looked at the passengers, at their phones, at their relieved faces. "Your onward travel will be arranged. I can assure you, it will be on other airlines." She walked back to row 32. She looked at Sarah, the young mother, who was crying with relief. Evelyn handed her a business card. "Mom, you witnessed this from the beginning. Your testimony will be invaluable. Please contact my office." She then turned to the woman in 33B, the one who had started the clapping. "You too. Thank you for speaking up." Evelyn Reed turned, her standard issue roller board in hand. She walked down the aisle, past the sobbing, terrified trainee Chloe, and off the aircraft. She didn't look back. She left the stunned passengers, the flashing police lights, and the multi-million-dollar wreckage of a company collapsing in her wake. The karma wasn't just hard, it was catastrophic, final, and federally mandated. That is the story of what happens when prejudice and power intersect at 30,000 feet. The airline, Velocity, was grounded for 6 weeks. The subsequent FAA audit uncovered hundreds of violations, from maintenance logs to training failures. David Warren was forced out by his board, and the airline was eventually sold for parts. Barbara Jensen was fired, of course, and faced federal charges for interfering with a federal agent and filing a false security report. She lost her flight certificate for life. And Chloe, the trainee, she cooperated fully. She left the industry, went back to school, and, as far as we know, is now a social worker. This story, or versions of it, happens every day. It's a reminder that bias isn't just an opinion. In a safety-critical job, it's a weapon. Dr. Evelyn Reed proved that the most dangerous thing on that flight wasn't a suspicious passenger. It was a flight attendant who judged a person by the color of their skin and not by the content of their character or the power of their badge. Music swells slightly, then fades to a supportive, engaging tone. If you were shocked by this story, or if you've ever felt judged or unseen, please, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true, real-life stories where karma delivers justice. Your support helps us tell these important stories. Thanks for listening. banks.